So we had not one but two grandchildren to look after for nearly 24 hours. And as much as I love grandchildren, one of the good parts about them is you can give them back after a short time. But they had to sleep over. And they're little angels while they're asleep. But at 4:45 in the morning, when one wanders in and goes, "Granddad," yes. It was, some of you are probably going, "Oh, this is pretty trivial." And other grandparents are out there going, "Yeah, I can deal with that." But it was just devastation. Two little children, they're only sort of that big. And the devastation that was wreaked upon our house and ourselves is just unbelievable. There's Play-Doh in the grouting. There's red ink on the back of the lounge chair. There's little piles of gravel all around the yard. I go, what's this? I had a pile of gravel tucked away under the house for some landscaping. Anyway, one of the littlest one found that he loves piles of dirt and gravel and sand and stuff. Oh, he's got this. And it'd be all right if he just played with it there, but he picks it up, he runs around and he finds a path or something and he goes, "Duh!" And he throws it on the ground and watch all the stones scatter everywhere. So there's just stuff everywhere through the house, complete devastation. I'm just amazed how, if a team of terrorists made a plan to attack our house and devastate it, they couldn't do as good a job as these two did. I mean, it's planned and coordinated. My problem was that I thought the two of us could handle the two of them. No, we have to have them outnumbered. If one of us decides they need to go and do something or go to the loo or something, and then it seems to be the communication between the two of them. One goes, "Right, we got him outnumbered now. You go for the road and I'll go for the power tools." So it was a bit of a stressful weekend, I tell you. But that was bad enough, but it was my fault. It's always my fault. But apparently, when the son rang up and said, "Oh, do you mind babysitting for overnight?" This is the first time we've looked after the other grandchild, which is now a 5-year-old granddaughter, and we've got her pretty well trained. But this is the first time we're invited to look after the two boys. And we thought, oh, we are privileged. So it was a big thrill. So how could I say no? But apparently I should have. When I told Wendy the exciting news, she goes, "What were you thinking?" Because we both had a really big week. She had a stressful time at work and I'd been doing night shift, and Friday I worked a 15-hour day. I had a house meeting on Friday night, and Saturday morning my son was coming over to help me build a new garden, so we're 8 hours of shoveling dirt and planting trees and doing all this stuff. Wendy had Saturday afternoon, she had a plant sale on at our place. And somewhere in that weekend we had to fit in visiting my sister and her husband who'd come down from the country. So we had to do all this around two little grandchildren. And I might seem like I'm whinging here, but I'm really, yeah. But after all that, it was all sort of worth it when one of them comes up to you, puts his hands up and go, "Cuddles, Granddad, cuddles." And you go, look down on those beautiful little blue eyes and, okay. But consequently, in the midst of all this, the talk that I had rattling around in my brain for today never quite came into full fruition. So all this then made me think about a talk that I did about 13 years ago. And it was called Messing Up the Kitchen. Don't know if you remember it. But the point of that talk was that one day I cleaned our kitchen, did a beautiful, thorough job of cleaning up our kitchen. Now, I'm a professional in the cleaning industry, and I teach hundreds of people how to clean in some of Australia's biggest food factories. So when I clean, I can clean. I have the chemicals, I can use them. So I'd spent a large portion of a day scrubbing and scouring and scraping and absolutely had our kitchen absolutely pristine. You know what happened then? Wendy came in and said, "Oh, I want to make some biscuits." "What? You want to dirty my kitchen? What are you thinking, woman?" But she needed to make biscuits. She has a bit of issues with digestions, and she's limited in what she can eat from the esophageal cancer that she once had. And so she's, got to be careful on what she eats. So she needed to cook something. But my point there, I guess, the point of what was happening there is that I'd gone to all this trouble to make this kitchen spotless. And here she was wanting to actually use the kitchen as a kitchen. And the emphasis of my story, and I guess the talk today, is that kitchens aren't really designed for cleaning. They're there for cooking stuff and preparing food. That's what they're all about. You might have heard the story or the saying in ships and round ports and stuff like that. There's a saying that a ship in a bay or a port is safe, but that's not what ships are meant for. Ships are meant for sailing the seas and going dangerous places and carrying goods. And that was like the kitchen. I was getting upset about somebody messing up my kitchen. But messing up the kitchen is really like life, isn't it? If you want to live life to the fullest, you're going to make a mess at times. And if you want to be involved in life, you are going to get messed upon at times. If life was meant to be messy, maybe we'd be easy to clean up. But sometimes, if we want to protect ourselves from the mess, we can separate ourselves. And if we do that, we can become focused too much on having our own perfect little world, our perfect little lives, our perfect little kitchen. And we can get unreasonably upset if somebody wants to make a mess in our kitchen by doing so. And quite often in relationships and with people and with life, it might simply be messed up by somebody saying or doing the wrong thing according to us. Okay? And Jesus spoke about things like this often in his Proverbs, and we'll actually have a look in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 14. It's not what Jesus said in this particular verse, but this summarises it fairly well, I think. In Proverbs 14, verse 4. Yep. It says simply here, "Where no oxen are, the crib or the stalls or the working area is clean, but much increase is by the strength of the ox." Okay, so you might do a beautiful job cleaning out the stalls where the oxen are normally kept. And you could keep it clean by not having any oxen in there. But at this day and age, the oxen brought about much increase. They were used to thresh out the wheat or to grind the flour mills or to pump water into some irrigation. And by the strength of those oxen, you would get much increase, much value out of their work and out of their energy. But in the process, they didn't have solar power or hydropower or any clean energy or even internal combustion engines to do things. So oxen and other animals weren't particularly efficient. Where you had their use and their energy and their effect, you also had some waste products, some mess left behind. And this is what the Proverbs here is getting at. In life, you might have a mess made by people sometimes, but there's a lot of value in that, in fellowship, and the blessings that also come. Like grandchildren, total devastation, but you wouldn't trade them in for anything in the world. And even wives, she wanted to mess up my kitchen, and I might have grumped and complained about what. But all she has to do is smile at me nicely and then, oh, it's okay, it's all right, dear. Bit of a softie in that area too. So, and so we sort of need to be a little bit that way with our brothers and sisters and other people in the world too. They will offend us. They will say stupid things. They will say the wrong things at the wrong point in time. They'll seem to have a knack for finding the things that they shouldn't say at that particular time in your life. But it will happen. Of course, along the way, there will be blessings and wonders from brothers and sisters and friends and family and relatives. So we need not to focus on the negative things, but on the positive. All right, Acts chapter 2, verse 41. Some of my favourite scriptures here in Acts chapter 2, but it's not the usual ones. In what must we do to be saved? All right, in here it says in verse 41, Then they that gladly received his word were baptized, and the same day there were added unto them about 3,000 souls. Wouldn't that be amazing? 3,000 people baptised, receiving the Holy Spirit on the same day. And verse 42, And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and in fellowship and breaking bread and in prayers. And fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done by the apostles. And all that believed were together and had all things common. And they sold their possessions and goods and parted them to all men as everyone had need. And verse 46, And they continued daily with one accord in the temple, breaking bread from house to house, did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart. Isn't that incredible? Normally you can, if you're close to people, you can tread on their toes. But here it talks about they were gathering together in the temple, but they were also gathering together in each other's homes. They were probably so excited about what they had that they were looking for any opportunity to gather together and rejoice in their fellowship. I remember when we were in Ipswich, I had a fellowship out in Ipswich, and there was a lot of people there about our age, young couples with young families. And we'd find any excuse to go over and visit other people in other houses. Every weekend we'd be out for a barbecue, or we'd be building gardens in one guy's place. The next weekend we'd be over building a garden in somebody else's place. We'd be living in each other's pocket. And I don't remember hardly ever, I'm sure we did, but hardly ever treading on each other's toes as close as we were, because we're thrilled at the company and the fellowship that we had. But it seems if we draw apart and we're not so close, it seems illogical, but if we're further apart, it seems to be easier to tread on each other's toes, as opposed to being close together and in fellowship. Seems to be a buffer from the toe treading. It's only when you become further apart we seem easier to upset each other. It says here, and they had all things common among them and us. I'm sure nobody had a perfect kitchen, and none of us are perfect. So it must have been a very close-knit community, and that's how we are meant to be as well. Right, how do you overcome that? How do you overcome that treading on toes? Firstly, I believe there must have been a lot of love involved. Going back to the grandchild theory, have you ever had to change a dirty nappy? If it's somebody else's kid, it's not a pleasant experience. But if it's your children, it's almost a joy. Well, come on. I said almost. It's almost a joy. Why? Because there's love involved. Right? I haven't convinced you yet, have I? Oh, well, okay. All right. So when it's your child or when it's somebody else's child, you're focused on the mess, okay? When it's your child, you're focused on the child and the love that goes with it. So instead of your focus being, it's okay? So that has that relationship, that closeness, the art of not stepping on each other's toes has to start with love. And working your way through a mess is a good way to build upon it. It's a good way to, secondly, it would have been in that situation, in that day, from the day of Pentecost onwards, it was a productive mess. Okay? As much as people might get upset or whatever, they were producing new fellowships. 3,000 in the first day. Would have been thousands and thousands after that as well. So it was a productive mess. So it's like in the kitchen when Wendy's making some yummy goodies. It's not so bad, the mess. Well, it's decent, yeah. Anyway, when you've got those goodies there to follow, the produce, the productivity, the mess doesn't seem as important. And that was what was happening here on the day of Pentecost, that people were being added daily because people were being productive. They weren't worried about treading on each other's toes. They were worried about getting out there and preaching the gospel that they had. And they were being productive. Excuse me, Luke 13, verse 6. Luke 13, verse 6, and Jesus spoke this parable unto them. Excuse me. A certain man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard, and he came and he sought fruit therein, and found none. Fig trees apparently like that. We have a couple at our place. And he found none. Then said he unto the dresser of his vineyard, Behold, these 3 years I come seeking fruit off this fig tree, and find none. Cut it down. Why cumbereth or burden the ground? And he answered, saying unto him, Lord, let it alone this year also, till I shall dig about it, and dung it, or put some manure around it. And if it bear fruit, well, and if not, then after that thou shalt cut it down. So he said to the master, give it a chance. I'll really look after it, I'll put some manure around it, and hope it'll grow. So manure in the Bible days was a very valuable fertiliser. It wasn't just something that made a mess somewhere. It made things grow. But fertiliser or a mess can burn young trees, young saints, young people. If you're not strong enough to endure problems or difficulties caused by whatever reason, it can cause a problem. You can be burnt by it. But mature trees, people that are strong enough to handle the manure, can grow very much thereby. So it's a valuable thing. In 1 Peter 1:7, we won't turn to it, but it talks about there the trial of our faith being more precious than gold. And in Isaiah 48:10, it talks about refined in the furnace of affliction. So it talks about mess or problems or difficulties being a good thing. It helps us to grow. Instead of jumping up and down, saying, I'm not coming back to this church because somebody said something about my mustache. It was on crooked or something. I don't know, whatever it might be. And sometimes they don't even know that they've offended you. So we could get all offended and all upset. So in Luke 13, verse 7 and 9 there, it talks about if the tree doesn't bear fruit, cut it down. Okay, where most of us here are mature trees in the Lord, we should be bearing fruit. So what would be the comparison in our fellowship of that parable? We should be encouraged, we should be strengthened, we should be fed plenty of manure, well, maybe not. We should be encouraged to grow. We should be provided with incentive and encouragement to grow. But holy new doctrine, Batman, what if you don't grow? Maybe we should go, right, you've got 12 months to bring a new person, well that's it, you're out. How would that work? Okay, I'll get onto it right away. Hopefully it would. Hopefully it might inspire somebody. But I guess that's not really the way it should work, is it? We should be inspired by the fellowship we've got, by the doctrine we have, to go out and share it. Unfortunately, there are other fruits of the Spirit as well, such as in Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. And most of them, however, involve dealing with other people, especially brothers and sisters. Are you bearing fruit, brothers and sisters? I guess that's the question I wanted to ask today. And if not, just be aware why. Maybe it's because somebody's tread on your toes. Maybe because somebody's made a mess in your kitchen. So I encourage you, go out, preach the gospel. But don't do it because you feel like you have to. It's like changing some other person's kid's nappy. Pray about it. Desire to do it. Just do it. It might feel like changing a nappy at first, but if you're doing it out of love, as I said, when you're changing your own kid's nappy, it's nowhere near as bad. Because if you love the Lord loves you. If you love the brethren, because you love people, go out, preach the gospel. All the people said? Okay.